Okay, so this video is going to talk about a technique called completing the square. Before we jump into that, though, we have to talk about what a perfect square is. There is a video on this channel on that pattern, but I'm kind of going to review it really quickly here. So if you look at this, this is a perfect square. So I've got a square here and a square here, and you can see sort of the relationship between this and this over here. The square root of that is 2x, the square root of that is 3, and then the middle term is positive, so I put a plus between them. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and try that with these. So this pattern, you can just, there's not really any math, there's no calculating, you just kind of look at it. So the square root of that would be 5x, and the square root of that would be 1, and then what happens is I have a minus 10x, so I know it's a minus. And then on this one, the square root of that is 9x, and the square root of that is 6, and then it's a minus because of a minus here. Now, if this confuses you and you're sort of like, well, I don't see how this and this are equal, I have another video on this. You might want to check that out now before moving forward. But anyways, this sort of way of writing a trinomial is going to help us solve equations. So one of the things that you'll be taught in math class usually is how to find the constant c to complete the square. So you'll get something like this where you have the trinomial, but they want you to figure out what this number would be so that the trinomial is a perfect square. So it's actually really easy to do. We're going to use this formula here. So c is equal to, you take the b term, which is the middle term, and you divide it by 2, and then you square it. So this is what the formula looks like, but usually, people just learn it in English. You take the middle number, divide it by 2, and then square it. But that's what it looks like as a formula. So that's what I'm going to do here, is I'm just going to complete the square on this, which means I'm going to take this middle term here, divide it by 2, and then square it. So that's going to be negative 4, and negative 4 times negative 4 is a positive 16. So if I rewrite this trinomial so that it's a perfect square, this part here is going to stay the same, and then this came out to, negative 4 squared, which is 16. The other thing to note is that I had a negative here. This isn't going to ever become a negative, because whether this is negative or positive, remember, if you square something, it's going to be positive all the time, okay? So that's one of the errors I'll see a lot of times, is if this is negative, sometimes this will end up negative, but remember, you're squaring. So the next one here, I'm going to be looking at this guy right here. So what I'm going to do is take my 18 divided by 2. That's going to give me a 9. And then I'm going to square it, and that's going to give me an 81. So if I rewrite this trinomial so it's a perfect square, this part here you can see is exactly the same. All I'm going to do is tack on that 81 on the end. And that last one here, so my middle term divided by 2, which is 3 squared, it gives me a 9. So I have x squared plus 6x and plus 9. And that's all there is to it. That's how you complete the square.